Welcome, dear audience, and also welcome, of course, especially to you, Svetla Parmakova, my special and wonderful guest from Bulgaria today. Svetla is the impact and finance expert at Krisos, and we will learn a lot more again about Krisos, even though for those of you who have watched some other edition, a previous edition of Unbossing Leadership with 𝗂𝘂𝘁 from Spain, you have already been acquainted with Krisos, and today we're going to go deeper into that from Svetla's perspective and also learn about her own journey, of course, for how to grow into this area of supporting progressive organizations and also your work in Bulgaria. So welcome to you, Svetla, and I'll hand it over to you to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me, Marion. It's a pleasure to have this conversation with you today.
Sure. Yes, please. Of course. You know, I've read so much already about you, your work. I especially love your clarity when you write and post on LinkedIn. I get that you really know what you're doing. You're at the pioneering end of it. You're actually out there with Krisos and in Bulgaria. So I'm looking forward to hearing stories, of course, and also some facts about the finances, because the title of our event today is you don't have to choose between profit and purpose, because if you focus on people, profit is the outcome. So yeah, let us know a little bit about your journey, Svetla. How did you become who you are today and doing what you're doing today?
Well, so far it's been quite a long journey. I'll try not to spread it too much, but my first job was in finance, and it was a very, very good one because I had a lot of autonomy. I was working on projects, enjoying collaboration with people without too much hierarchy within the organization. So I really didn't know much about the topic of corporate structures and hierarchy. And then I was about 28 and I switched organizations and I got headhunted by a bank, a 3,000 bank in Bulgaria. And from day one, they gave me one of their risk functions to lead and transform, because it was working in an old-fashioned way. A funny side element of the story is that the function dealt with the valuation of all the collateral pledged at the bank. So Bulgaria being a, let's say, immature market, people would try to take loans and claim higher collateral value. So it was a very tricky position where you had to withstand a lot of requests for higher values. And as a risk management function, it was quite important to the bank. There were a lot of findings from the Austrian regulators, and we were working to amend those. And this is when my journey in bureaucracy started. This is when I realized what it feels to work in a place managed by policy and not by common sense. On one side, I was quite lucky because I didn't recognize it, but they would say, Svetla, you should be very proud. You are B-1. You are working directly below the board. And I would say, I am minus nothing. I'm a full person. This is not a good name for me, first of all. And second of all, even if it's good for me, it still did little to help my team, because all the processes in the bank were really going against humanity. Just to give you a sense of it, I would get a report every Monday morning with all the hours of my team members from the previous week, and I had to send the chief risk officer a written report why someone was late and why they left earlier or something. So fun times. And yeah, it brought me a burnout and the burning realization that there is nothing for us if we reach the top of the corporate ladder. Around me, there were people who had spent 20 years in the bank, and they were quite proud to have reached this position. And at the same time, it was very disappointing in terms of meaning or fulfillment of the job done. So I started asking questions, and it was at some point in August 2015 when I was really, really down already after one of the major milestones, having rolled out the software we had to develop and working to stabilize it and make it work and pass all regulation requirements, when I was in 𝗪𝗵 with my partner. And yeah, to be completely honest, I was in a hotel crying because I didn't want to go back to the bank. Yeah, I was like, 2 years have passed. I told myself 2 years is enough. And now I see my team, nothing is stable. I cannot leave them alone. I don't want to leave them alone. I feel responsible. But at the same time, this is a place where you don't feel like you want to belong. Whenever I would say, why do we do this way? They would say, Svetla, this is a procedure. There's a policy. Management board signed on the policy. You cannot question that. Yeah. So it was in the midst of that I came across Frederic Laloux's book, Reinventing Organizations.
Right.
This is where it started,
essentially. Yeah, the big turning point for so many of us. So if you don't mind, I'd like to just highlight a few things that I heard and see if that agrees with you, and also for the audience. You know, I think what you have spoken about resonates for so many of us, which is, you know, when you're contrasting bureaucracy and you were in the bank, you were in an environment where regulations, you know, I mean, they play a top role, and you chose that. And at the same time, you were realizing that you were somehow compromising something that you called common sense. And then you started asking yourself, am I really having to choose between one and the other? Why shouldn't it be possible to do both together? But that's not what you were finding. And when you were thinking about the -1, what does that actually mean? That doesn't represent me. And what you really cared about then already was making an impact, and making an impact at least for the team that you were leading. And what I heard was that you were being asked to actually exercise a kind of control over your team that was just not making sense to you, but also going, what you said, against humanity, and which is, you know, of course, one of the things that I think a lot of us found our longing fulfilled when we read Reinventing Organizations, that it's really possible to bring both together, common sense and humanity, profitability and good business, where some control, of course, has its place, for sure, right? And I think one of the things that I heard you say also resonates for a lot of my clients, is staying longer in a position, even though you have these inner voices screaming at you, where at some point you either get sick or you break down crying in a hotel room. But you have this sense of solidarity and loyalty to your team. And you can't imagine kind of leaving them alone. And at the same time, it's, you know, you're sacrificing yourself, maybe even your health. And at some point, the tension gets so strong that you're going to have to rise and transcend that polarity, which it seems that you have found a way. So tell us more. What was the next step then after 𝗪𝗵?
Oh, well, right there and then I took a sheet. Actually, it was a digital sheet, but nevertheless. And I took my notes from the book, from one article about it, and then the book about taming the ego, about all the way that we can live these values even without them being endorsed from the leadership above us. Okay. I had a few. It was difficult for me to shield my team from everything that was going on inside the organization. But nevertheless, I changed a few habits, making sure that everything that came to me reached them as well, in terms of transparency, in terms of having the full information, in terms of making sure that they feel confident making decisions and all of that. And then I made sure I exited the bank, to be honest. I got pregnant with my first kid. And I still remember this clearly because she was already born. She was 1 year old, and then still very, very young. And I had to choose whether to see her in the morning or to see her in the evening, because working in the bank the way that it used to be, especially in my position, back-to-back meetings with other department heads, I couldn't be there online. I had to be in person. So I went and quit my job, entered a cab, and I thought to myself, my daughter would never know I was a banker. So it was a very proud moment for me. and it's really funny because I had colleagues in this bank who were so proud to be working for a bank. And then I realized later on that what they saw in this organization was that it's the blood system of economy. It provides the money to fuel economy, to fuel growth, to fuel development. And the only thing I saw was the bureaucracy, the hierarchy, and the lack of common sense. So it really is about perspectives and what matters to us. Obviously, this was my thing. And this is one thing I would be forever grateful, because it was not the best work experience, but it brought me to what matters the most to me. And I'll be always grateful for that.
Yeah. And if I may say so, what I heard when you say that sentence, getting into the cab and saying, my daughter will never know that I was a banker. For me, that's a great statement, saying that's let's say an expression of your identity, your very identity and what you identified with. You made a conscious choice to disconnect that from your job title, because you thought you saw how so many people around you were so identified with that status and what it meant in society and for them. And you made a conscious choice to say, no, I don't want that. I don't want that for me. And I don't want that for my daughter to see that in me. So that's a huge developmental step.
It has been, in these steps, when you say no, sometimes you grow more than when you say yes. And I have other such stories, but let's not diverge the conversation too much. So yes, this is how my formal experience in the hierarchical setting finished.
Yeah.
And then I started looking for a role that would give me the opportunity to contribute to the way the organization is designed and managed. So I transitioned from finance and risk management. I went towards operations. It was a brief stint. I was a operations director in a 1,000 IT services company. And this is when I learned the second lesson, that nothing changes unless owners and C-level agree.
Okay. Yes.
Just in line with what Frederic was sharing in the book, but then I had to see it for myself. And then I tried to be an independent advisor working with organizations, mostly on culture, because I thought that this would be somehow my sense of my understanding of people in Bulgaria, and the lack of understanding for letting go of control, and how also the ego and the immature economy, and how leaders really want to be seen as a decision maker who says, yes, I know, and I will tell you how to do it, so listen to me and go ahead. And I thought that maybe working on culture would be easier. But at some point, you cannot really work on culture unless leaders change too.
That's right.
I'm sure you know that firsthand with all of your work.
I do, for many, many years now.
Yeah, so last year I had to bite the bullet and say, okay, enough with culture and speaking things to teams when their leaders don't really act upon them. You either going all in or not at all, or you go back and be somebody's manager somewhere. Because this was my CV, this is my career record, let's say. Mm-hmm. So, and it's a funny story, because I wrote to several people. I got to know several organizations in the self-management space. Mm-hmm. But first of all, I wrote to 𝗵 at Krisos. And maybe a month later, we were already working together. When I realized that this is the second time I write to 𝗵 for Krisos, because Krisos was announced in October 2021. Mm-hmm. And at the time I had just quit my operations director role, and I was looking for a new challenge. And when I heard about Krisos, I thought, wow, this is exactly what I want to do, because Krisos takes all the limitations and biases around self-managed organization, how the business will crumble, how financials will be lost, how people will be jobless, and the founders will be left without any value of their equity. And how we show that, in fact, these two work great together, when we change organization from within, when we invest in building trust and adult-to-adult relationships, how, in fact, we create so much value for all stakeholders that not only we create a stronger financially organization, but also people have the capacity and the willingness to also think about other stakeholders and do good for the planet environment as well.
That's right.
So it was really beautiful to see that I had reached out 2 years earlier almost 3 years earlier. And then finally, it happened. So I see Krisos as something which was meant for me a little bit. And I just had to find the right timing to be part of the team.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Thank you, Pim, that he knew that you were the right one to bring in, and great timing, so it sounds. So yeah, thank you for sharing your background story with us. That's really, really helpful. I'm pretty sure also for the audience. So let's go to Krisos. Is this a good time for you to speak about what you've been doing and your perspective and the experience on the impact, and share a bit about your impact theory that you have at Krisos, and also, you know, the perspectives of the community, the investors, what's relevant to them, and how does that play a role in the transformation, for example, as we've seen at 𝗵𝗵𝘁, and now coming up the second company that Krisos had bought just very recently.
Yes, lucky us. We had a second acquisition in Barcelona. I will share a bit more about that in a minute. But first, maybe on my role. When we started working together, Krisos had the mandate to fundraise, to complete our full fund size. And I started doing things the way I thought they should be done, given that it's a private equity fund, looking at fund of funds, family offices, even foundations, given that we are looking to create better jobs and more equality. But then we kept finding little in common with these investors. We would join a call with Pim, share our story. People would usually be quite impressed with it and say, wow, that sounds great. But then when they would look at their mandates for investment, we wouldn't fit. So it was very interesting to see how, on one side, we are not a typical impact investment because we offer 20% IRR, which is quite much higher than what typical impact funds work with. And here the main argument is that if you're providing 20% IRR, then maybe you're leaving impact on the table. Maybe you could do more with the money. But because it's our proof of concept fund, we wanted to really showcase that this is good for all aspects, for the business, for the people, and for the larger community.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side, if you go to impact family offices and foundations, self-management made sense in terms of the impact, but did not ring such a strong bell when it comes to our transformation approach. So eventually, we had to admit to ourselves that Krisos is fueled by the community of pioneers who believe in decentralization, who believe in progressive organizations, who want to see people work as adult to adults. So the community of pioneers we are building initially with a crowdsourcing approach with about 15 pioneers who crowdsourced 20k euro each. And then we had the initial funding for the fund setup and to fuel the acquisition of 𝗵𝗵𝘁 in the very beginning, search phase and all. Even now, when we attract investors, these are entrepreneurs. These are people who have struggled themselves with these issues, with how to scale a business, how to engage people, how to keep ownership strong, how to make sure people feel they belong in this organization and deliver results for themselves and for the business. So our story, it seems, it resonates the strongest with entrepreneurs and pioneers in the self-management space. And it's such a beautiful way to bring it full circle, because now we have in our foundation, we have the partners who their entire life's work is in this space. And then we have the investors who pledge their money where they believe their values are. And then we create this very same impact for the companies that we acquire. It's a beautiful circle.
Yes. And it sounds amazing. So you again had to go through a journey where you had to learn who's a fit and who's not. And I specifically really, in every conversation I've had with Dunia as well, how again and again it comes back to the people that are involved, no matter what stakeholder, maybe except the owner, that doesn't have to necessarily be purpose aligned, but definitely the practitioners like yourself who support, and like myself, as well as the investors. You have to really have the purpose deep inside your system. It's not something that can be purely rational. It cannot be just about the profitability, or it makes sense to you. It has to be something that's in your bones and in your DNA through your own experience, and because you have a vision and you believe in the purpose, and that's crucial. So that's the community that needs to be built and was built in Spain, I believe. And if I may say so, that's what I'm hoping to build in Germany, as the first country to bring the 𝗫 approach or the Krisos approach to. Yeah.
This would be amazing. What we see, actually, our investors come from different geographies, but we do connect them at 𝗪𝗵𝗍𝗍 in Spain, close to the home turf of the 𝗫 approach that we use in our transformations. Making sure you get these first people right, that you get your support network right, really makes for a much better journey down the road. Today, when we learn, none of us have managed a fund before. It's not a nice thing to admit, but it's the truth, and we learn on the go, and we use common sense. Now, here we are allowed to use common sense, fortunately. We have to many times. And we are able to speak with our investors, with our partners in this journey, and to learn from them. And it's so refreshing when you have a partnership relationship based on shared values, on common beliefs that you are both working towards. It makes for a totally different conversation.
Yes, I believe so. And then these, how can you say, the polarities between the perspectives of the investor, the practitioner, and let's say all other stakeholders is less, because you're really aligned. You have different roles, of course, and different perspectives to bring to make it work, but not one is power over the other. It's really a partnership. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. So where should we go from here around the Krisos impact? And you may have a story or two from your perspective, I suppose.
Sure. The impact framework was a great effort. We always knew why we're creating Krisos, because we knew this is better for people, better for organizations, better for society. But working with 𝗿𝗄𝗋 Collective in the Netherlands, we actually got to think deeper about how we align our impact with larger societal goals. And we've been looking at 2 SDGs, good jobs and equality. And when it comes to good jobs, Dunya and Xavier developed a great survey that we use with organizations before and after transformation that goes really deep to evaluate all aspects of a job. When I saw it the first time, I was quite impressed, and I thought, okay, this really says it all, because it has freedom and responsibility, it has trust and respect, it has care and gratitude, it has personal development, it has commitment to a common purpose. It has all different aspects that make up a good job. We all know what good feels like when you have technical rather than personal challenges, when you grow, when you're motivated to deliver more and better job. And when you know that your efforts are appreciated, and you feel that it makes a change, makes a difference also for your life. But it's very difficult to get a hold of this type of work. And with this survey and with our transformation approach, we see how we are able to get people from, on a scale, let's say from 1 to 5, from nearly 0 to 4 and above on most of these indicators. So it's quite obvious the impact that we achieve with the 𝗫 transformation approach. The second pillar of our impact framework has to do with equality. I think Dunya must have shared this before, but in its core, 𝗫 is based on the understanding of adult-to-adult relationships at work. A hierarchical organization in its traditional form, and it was used, one of the partners who spoke a lot about this with me last year and opened my eyes about this, to be honest. I knew it in my heart, but I didn't really think about it so much, is that the hierarchical organization is more like a parent-child relationship. I am sure that many of the managers and leaders listening to us right now know how they feel about their teams. In a hierarchical organization, the way you are conditioned to hold total responsibility You need to take care. You need to go after everyone and see that they feel well, that they've done their job, that they don't need any other resources, and think about all the 1,000 little things for 1,000 people. And no, in that, it's not like that. It's adult to adult. Everyone carries their own weight and helps others because they have total common responsibility for a unified, aligned goal. So equality is the second pillar, in the sense that we are all grown adults with equal responsibility, equal opportunity to contribute and benefit from our work together. And there are many ways that this shows up. There are no privileges. Everybody has the same treatment, but there are also some very measurable outcomes. Two of those we have in our impact framework. One is decision-making participation. In a typical organization, for example, in 𝗏𝗏, before we acquired the company, had within 40 people team, had 5 levels of hierarchy. And at the same, can you imagine? I mean, this is really steep for a 40 people organization. And then there were maybe 8 people who were making decisions. Now, when we applied the framework with the different decision-making forums and people would elect representative for each decision-making forum, we have something like 52% of the team participating and being responsible for decisions that impact the whole team. It's a big difference.
Yes, very different. And that's where we can say the topic of ownership that my clients are struggling so much with is taken care of, just like that. Boom.
Yes, because people know it depends on them, and they feel the responsibility and they act on it. And these are elected roles that rotate with time. So it's not, it doesn't become another type of leadership that it becomes a little bit rigid in its position. We also measure share of women in leadership, which naturally grows as well. And maybe just to wrap up the topic of the impact framework, the third pillar that we are focused on is system change. System change on one side, because we changed the operating model of the organization to a completely different setup, which ensures a much more sustainable way forward, which doesn't depend on a single person, a single CEO, a single founder, a single manager. And then we seek to transition the organizations towards alternative ownership models. We are looking at employee ownership as the first option that we want to see more organizations adopt, especially since Krisos is focused on Spain, and in Spain there is a lot of governmental goodwill as well to create more cooperatives, and some of the organizations in 𝗏𝗏 group are also cooperatives, and we see this as a perfect fit for the 𝗏𝗏 transformation approach. Alternatively, if people do not feel the confidence to become co-owners of the organization, we are looking at ways to divide dividend rights from governance rights and create steward-owned organizations where the governance is driven by the people who are actually invested in the business. They are actually working in the business, and they know the business, and they know what's good for the business. And then investors who acquire the company after Krisos have dividend rights, but not necessarily rights to make crucial calls when they are so far outside the business.
Fantastic. Okay, so just to sum it up, maybe I missed it, but the second and the third, the second one is equality, the third one is system change, and the first one was?
Good jobs. All the aspects of good.
Right. The good jobs and the SDG. Right. Okay. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much. And one of the things also, and maybe you can share a little bit more detail if you're involved in it, is that straight from the beginning, once the company has been acquired by Krisos, you do the salary equilibrium, right? And that's a process. I just wonder, can you share a little bit about what that looks like in detail and how employees deal with that? Because it must be quite challenging, the topic about money and making it transparent and then making a decision together, which must be so empowering.
It is, and there is a reason why salary calibration comes in the beginning. First, it's exactly the reason that it's so important. It has impact in 2 ways. First of all, we take out one of the main concerns of people because they feel the uncertainty. And then on the other side, it really makes a statement. This is serious. We are changing the important things, and this is here to stay. Salary calibration is a topic that maybe it makes sense to have a real deep dive with the person that supported us on this journey in Krisos. Dunya can definitely connect you with the lady. She's also based in Spain. From what I remember, what I've seen is that people were really concerned about it, and they were worried about how they might be underevaluated by peers, because when we speak about trust may be difficult to establish within a team, but it's usually much, much worse across teams. And this is the space between teams where you need so much work to make sure that people believe in each other's intentions and they feel the other teams see them and think about them rather than think about themselves only. In the end, what we did was a calibration process where we defined certain criteria and everyone voted. Everyone gave an evaluation of the people they work with based on these criteria. And then we attached certain salary ranges for each rate. And this is how we came up with salary equality. This is actually the third component of the equality pillar in the impact framework. Not to have a salary pay gap larger than 2.5 times between the lower and the highest salary. And it also speaks to the perception that nobody does anything on their own. It's all teamwork. So you cannot really have such a major gap between remuneration in more or less the same business, in the same line of business. Of course, there is seniority, but then we recognize everybody's efforts. And the second remuneration component is the profit share, where NER usually works with 25-30% profit share. So this also made a big difference to people's lives. And when we speak about stories, one of my very, very favorite stories that Dunya shared last summer, and I keep returning on when I speak about Krisos, is the story of a lady. If I'm not mistaken, she's an accountant at 𝗀𝗏. And in August, I mean, you live in Spain, so you know, August is basically a month for vacations. So 𝗀𝗏 was closed for 2 weeks and all of them went on vacation. And when the lady came back, she shared with Dunya that every year when they go to vacation with her husband, they always have to be very, very careful about how much they spend. And her husband has a sweet tooth and he really wants to buy some particular Spanish coconut sweets. But she always has to be the mother that says, no, enough is enough, we don't have money, or la, la, la. And now in this vacation, after the salary calibration and all of that, they were, I quote, like little kids. They bought everything they wanted. So it always warms my heart, and it shows me how pure, genuine, and simple the change that we seek is. It's a better quality of life. It's a better every day for every single person who has a job. And it brings me back to the reason why I wanted to go into self-management. My lack of fulfillment was one thing, but I was thinking it's not possible that my kids would work this way. I don't want them to work this way. I want them to have full lives where they can experiment and learn and change direction and contribute and feel as whole human beings. And yeah, this is the best impact that we do with Krisos.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Yeah, and of course, then we also have maybe some people in the organization who may think it's a cool idea when they were introduced to it. Maybe they were invited to visit other companies that have already gone through it, and they feel like, yeah, now I have a real sense. I know of the benefits, but also the hard times, and that they're normal. I'm on board. But then when it comes to maybe their own earnings and a change to that towards lesser maybe than more, or their leadership status taken away from them, do you have anything to say about that? How do you experience that, and how do you deal with that?
In terms of the salary, within NER, we always speak about raising the bar higher rather than asking people to have less, because it's also about taking care of their families. So in some ways it may not be the best, but when it comes to the status game, I think you're entirely correct here. And when we have people voting no for a transformation, among them always are managers who fear they would not have a say in things unless they have this positional power.
Right.
The good thing about the net transformation approach is that we recognize the value of former managers and their know-how for the business, and we transition them towards a sales role. So they work on business development and they continue to contribute in a way that is very, very fundamental and important for the business.
Right.
Daniel, the former owner of 𝗵𝗵𝗁, he also moved towards sales, and this was instrumental to make sure that the business doesn't suffer. One of the main issues that we've seen, of course, managers, they may be disappointed, but maybe the bigger challenge that we've seen is for everybody to be able to handle conflicts on their own. Because in a typical organization, you can always hide and act like the how do you call this? Like someone who has been treated badly and say, "Oh, I'm not guilty. I'm just the object of this. So I just have to wait, and my manager will escalate, and they will deal with it. And I won't be happy with the result, but I will also have the opportunity to say I'm not happy and complain about it." And now, in the self-management space, you have to really own it and be able to have difficult conversations and be able to address issues in a constructive way and keep the relationship strong.
Right.
And this is what we realized last summer. Went to 𝗵𝗵𝗁, also with a couple of other people from our team, to have conversations and interviews with all team members. And the main learning that we had was that people were not prepared in terms of soft skill muscles to deal with these difficult conversations.
Right. Yes.
And it really shows you the difference of what you need to build as a soft skill muscle. And this is maybe the biggest way in which we have upgraded the NERD transformation approach. We spend so much time training people in emotional intelligence, in conflict handling, consent decision-making, where we make sure that we make a decision based on lack of objections and lack of something that we are missing, instead of finding consensus or an autocratic decision. And also the TIF leadership trainings. I believe all of us in the self-management space are huge fans of what TIF is doing, and they're able to upskill people to be able to have these difficult conversations in a meaningful human way. And maybe this is the other important aspect of it. People who went through the transformation in 𝗵𝗵𝗁, they would say that now they are better equipped to handle their lives and their relationships outside of work as well.
Yeah, I believe that's true. Easy, yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, so that's for sure one of the things we don't really think so much about, but in essence, even in our personal lives, we're not so much able to have a difficult conversation. As much as you're trained, there's always tricky waters to tread, and you have to be really prepared and careful how you come across. And working in this environment makes you a better adult overall.
Yes, yeah, fantastic. And that's what we want, right? Conscious organizations, not just conscious practice, but conscious people. Yes. So the maturity is elevated significantly, is what I'm hearing. And it's not just for work. It affects obviously all areas of my life, because that's how I show up. Yeah. I'm wondering, because, before our call, we had a little conversation, and you shared that there is, some evidence over time that the NERD group has created, evidence, tracking some of their successes. Can you give us a little bit of a flavor and some numbers, actually, that maybe some of the viewers will be curious to hear, before and after of some of the significant transformation companies?
Sure. As I shared, there is a lot of track record in Spanish that I haven't been able to access, but looking at what we use to base our business model in the fund, we've looked at the impact both in terms of people and financially. I was quite impressed to see, of course, you see absenteeism falling, people engagement and overall retention of people skyrockets. But you also see, and you can imagine, and even people who are not into self-management would expect that, because they would say this is a transformation which is people-centered. So of course, we should expect that people would be happier. But that's just one side of the coin. What we see is that organizations consistently trail higher than average revenue and EBITDA growth. For example, in the first year after net transformations, the track record of such transitions has been in the range of 30% growth year over year.
Wow.
This is for a stable business which is used to having a 5% year-on-year revenue growth and is learning to live with it.
Yeah.
5% at the most. So it's quite substantial, and even within 𝗲𝗏 we hit higher than that, and we are looking to expand into new business niches to grow the business altogether in a way that makes this track record even much more substantial. So yeah, both people-wise and financially, this is a very, very strong value proposition. And because we usually have this conversation on the ESG side, we have the social impact, the governance impact. What we saw in 𝗲𝗏 is that people on their own, by their own initiative, created an internal working group that would deal with certifications and ensure that the business is also much more environmentally friendly. So when you take care of people, there is a ripple effect on the financial bottom line, but also on purpose and society as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Common sense takes over. Oh my goodness. Get rid of people.
Yeah. Like, yes, let's hope for more common sense.
Yeah, I mean, decentralize decision-making and leadership, and then all of a sudden common sense takes over and less stupid decisions are being made, is what I like to say.
As long as we learn from them, it's still okay.
Yeah.
As long as we do some reflection afterwards.
Mm-hmm. And can you just share also just a little bit before we go to your work in Bulgaria? So you shared earlier for the investors who are typically, people that are purpose aligned. They're pioneers that have gone through it themselves with their own company, and so they believe in it and want to support it. And you spoke about, I believe, of 20% return, which is really, really interesting. So let us know a little bit about how that works, because you had to learn the hard way, managing a fund for the first time. What does it look like as a journey for the potential investor? If I think about people in Germany approaching me, what might they need to hear and learn about the business model? And when do they actually get their return? And how do they balance their desire for return, but of course also the impact and the transparency, and not having any say as the transformation actually is executing? Can you help us understand that perspective a little bit more?
Well, the return is influenced by several things. One is the cost structure that you create. With Krisos, because we created a fund, and a fund is, after all, a regulated entity that requires a certain level of reporting. Also, investor onboarding has quite a lot around it in terms of ability to onboard from certain geographies, know your investors' processes, and all of that. So as a setup, it's quite expensive. This is what we learned a little bit the hard way, in terms of setting it up in the beginning, but also running it over the course of the fund. So generally, maybe a simpler structure might offer even better returns. When it comes to investors, I think there are three things that make the difference. One is, of course, the transformation framework, being able to show track record, understanding, and the ability to do it. In our case, 3 of the partners are among the most experienced transformation coordinators in this particular approach in the world. So this is one sure advantage. The second aspect is ability to source deals, so that you can really find the right deal. In our case, because we speak about basically reinventing the organization, we do not need a successful business to acquire. We can just as well transform and improve a business that is struggling in much the same way that we are doing with the 𝗪𝗵, our second acquisition now. But still, you need a mature business. You need some foundation, and also you need to make sure that your acquisition costs are not too high, because this also impacts the return on investment, especially if it's not a fund, if it's just a simple structure where you want to go and buy a single business. The return gets higher if you have more acquisitions within a structure. For example, if Krisos is left with just these 2 acquisitions, we will not be able to deliver 20% IRR. It really depends on our ability to at least acquire and transition 3 or 4 companies within this fund. So search costs, acquisition costs, the ability to find the right partners and do things right, if not from the first time, then let's say the second at the most, because every process takes costs. And in our case, the way that we expect people to vote before we finish an acquisition, it really is tricky. Last year, we were working on a deal where we were hoping that we'll be able to do the vote before acquiring. So we were working on due diligence a little bit. And then the founder finally said no. So we couldn't go with it, but we had already invested in this process.
Wow, okay.
So this is also a bit tricky. And I would say the third item is living what we are claiming. When we speak about progressive organizations, one of the first rules in the book is transparency. Everybody knows the numbers. Everybody understands how they work. This is what we're also working to achieve with our investors. Traditionally, funds have a quarterly reporting cadence with some typical reports created by the fund admin, and then some manager reporting, which can be quite basic. What we try to do is provide as much detail as we can around the actual financials, the actual partners, how we make decisions, why we have done what we have done, so that they can understand the cost structure and they can be sure that the fund is not just a vehicle for us to get payments from 3 separate entities. Because in the case of Krisos, we have a fund manager, we have the fund in the Netherlands, and we also have the holding company in Spain. So there are 3 different legal entities, and to understand the structure, it takes time for investors. So we need to be really transparent and open about it, so that we're all on the same page.
Yeah, fantastic. And sounds like a lot of work and a lot of expertise that you need to bring on board. And I hear that in order to lower the cost, you are actually thinking of, finding an alternative to the funding or structure that you're thinking about for the future.
Well, it depends. If we are able to fundraise a 100 million fund, then the fixed fund costs might be worth it. If not, then if it's a deal by deal basis, then a fund is definitely not the best option to go.
Yeah, that's great and good to learn from. Wanting to set something similar up in Germany. Yes, thank you so much. Let's go to Bulgaria and to what you are doing and what you're excited about. So help us understand, what are you involved in?
Bulgaria has always been a bit tricky for me, because for years, since the first time I heard about 𝗏 was 2015, so it's been 10 years, and I've always been the odd one in the room speaking about things which nobody really thinks about, or is like, why would you take out the leaders? Lack of understanding that everyone becomes a leader. No, we need control, we need managers and all of that. So last year when I joined Krisos, and I thought to myself, okay, you found your place. You can safely give up on Bulgaria now and don't worry too much about speaking about it in Bulgaria. This is also one of the reasons why I post in English. I could be influencing Bulgarians in my own mother language, but I was thinking that maybe I don't need to do that. And then gradually in summer, I found a cooperative in Bulgaria, which is quite awesome. They do a great job. They're called 𝗵𝗫. And then I was working with youth on a project in corporate rebel, so I got to speak with other organizations in the region. And eventually, end of last year, one of those contacts, a great friend of mine, I can say now, Haluk from Turkey, he came to Bulgaria. And he presented at a meeting of the Entrepreneurs Organization. It's a Europe-wide organization. They have an amazing group of founders and a great learning community, a support community for founders. And I was there listening to his presentation and then had to present myself. And I said, okay, yes, I believe in decentralized organizations. I believe this is the best way to align people, purpose, and profit, and to make sure that everyone is happy with the outcome. And then I said, okay, but in Bulgaria, there are no such organizations. So I work with Krisos remotely. And then a founder approached me and said, okay, maybe there aren't, but I want to make my organization decentralized. So would you help me? And it's a funny thing because I didn't expect that. And I got to an opportunity that I would have considered an opportunity of a lifetime a few years back, because it gives you the chance. It's an ecosystem of different companies. It's about 3 different business verticals, 10 different companies. And the founder is looking to transition it towards an ecosystem of teams, smaller teams, which work independently. So it's an amazing playground. And it's really exciting to witness the process, because we started from the very beginning, helping him understand the different frameworks, finding the right people for the team, presenting the frameworks to the larger community inside. Now we are starting with the pilots. So it's quite exciting, I should say. I never expected this would happen. And I'm still a little bit, is this happening? But yes, it is.
So this means, if I understand correctly, you're not just transforming one organization at the time and after the other. Now you found a partner who said, help me build something bigger. You call it an ecosystem of companies. So different companies coming together and doing the transformation together and simultaneously. Is that correct?
Yes, the founder started his journey in one industry, security, one industry vertical. And with time, they expanded. Now they have 3 industry verticals: security, real estate, and healthcare. And in each of these verticals, there is between 2 to 3, 4 companies, different organizations. Mm-hmm. Some are very big, and some are tiny. But for all of them, he's looking to transition from the top-down approach towards a market-driven approach, and to also embed their own people-centric culture. They have very strong internal culture based on values that are, to be honest, fundamental for humanity. Values like health and happiness and freedom. So I do believe a lot of effort was spent to ensure this is really ingrained. And now, through this transformation, some of these values like freedom or happiness can be better manifested. So yeah, it's quite amazing to see, and it looks quite promising. Mm-hmm. I try not to have my hopes too high, because I've worked with founders in Bulgaria before, and it did not realize the way I expected. But now it's really exciting.
That's fantastic. So this organization is so promising because the members, the founders, the entrepreneurs already are open and are attracted to this organization because they believe in the purpose. So the filtering already has been done.
Yes, and they've been looking to implement this type of organizational model for a while. They started thinking about team of teams approach. I'm not sure if you've encountered Stan McChrystal's work, Team of Teams, the book. So this is what inspired them to start thinking along these lines about 5 years ago. And now together we discovered, of course, 𝗫 in Bilbao, but also we looked at other models like 𝗫𝗀 and 𝗫𝗂𝗁, and also reinvention, the model of hire in China. And maybe the model of hire in China was the best fit, because it gives on one side it gives the framework for an ecosystem of businesses, and at the same time it gives you a lot of freedom on the culture on team level. So we can have sociocratic principles, consent-based decision making, speaking in rounds, and self-management, elected leadership. All of that you can have in the team structure, but it also gives you a framework of how to scale it, which is quite powerful.
Yeah, fantastic. So that's different from the Krisos approach where the company is acquired. Here you actually leave, let's say, the founder in place, or And the company, ownership doesn't change, but you still actually have the willingness and openness to do the transformation nonetheless. Fantastic. So I'm looking at the time and I'm managing the time. We're coming a little bit towards the end of our conversation. I just wonder, because I'd like to leave our audience with maybe some main insights that you can distill. And I'm also thinking of something like, we can talk about this. I mean, we read Frédéric Laloux's book and we're inspired, but only some of us, like yourself, actually then went and ran with it and made tough decisions in terms of career, etc., and going into the uncertainty and actually making that leap. So if you want to share maybe some of those insights and principles. And the other thing is, I'd like to also see, you and I talked about offering something concrete for the audience. So if they want to get a deeper taste into what you shared today, you and I are offering something, let's say a 2-hour, 4-hour program that will be announced in the near future. So that's available too. And I wonder, how would you approach that if you want to leave the audience with that as well?
Thank you for the guardrails part. It's really helping me to think about how to add more value for the people listening to us right now. On the inside, I would say that anyone can start living those ways of work today. And if you want to do it, I would say do 3 things. If you are a leader or even a team contributor, you can still try and influence these aspects. One is seek more transparency, share proactively, seek to create a shared consciousness where everyone knows as much as possible, because the more people know, the better decisions they make. Second, give roles with ownership, meaning that whenever there's a role, there's also the responsibility to make a decision around it. And then there are all the frameworks that we can also explore during this 2 or 4-hour workshop about how to make sure the decision is made by the person who is closest to the problem. And finally, make sure to share rewards as well. Seek ways to reward your team in line with company or team results. As long as you have individual compensation structures in place, people will be fending off for themselves. The only way to have a real team is to align interests, align rewards, and align the common goal of the organization for everyone involved.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Svetla. So that's something you and I will continue our conversation about. And then when we're ready, we will offer maybe a taster, a pilot, and see what people take away from it. From my experience as a designer for events like that, I can say that, of course, the more concrete the issue that the participants bring, to say, I have a team, I have an organization, some kind of project that you bring that you can actually then apply what we're teaching, and you actually creating the results that you're looking for. So if that is something you want to start thinking about as one result of this recording, this beautiful event that we're sharing with you, that's fantastic. And stay tuned. We will announce our offering in the near future, and we look forward to seeing you then and there. And thanks very much to you, Svetla. It's a delight to speak with you. Your knowledge, I mean, also your ability to express in the English language. I mean, it's just a delight to listen to you. Brings so much clarity. I must say also hope, because I mean, in this paradigm shift, I guess what makes it so difficult for, and I'm including myself with my audience, if we haven't experienced this ourselves, if we haven't lived it and been part of a team that functioned this way, it's so hard to imagine. And how do we manifest a new reality if we cannot even imagine it? So these conversations are meant to help us as a collective to start imagining it, and to feel your passion is really, really helpful. So thank you so much for being a pioneer in this movement that is so important for all of us. Thank you, Svetla.
Thank you so much, Marion. I did not expect, honestly, to have this opportunity to speak with you today. It was my heart, and I hope I get to meet much more people passionate about these topics through your podcast.
Yes, thank you so much. Let's make it happen. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.